So, Past Lives, again, as I mentioned before the trailer, debuted earlier this year. It had its world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival. It was ultimately acquired by A24. Now, coming into the summer, which is just loaded with blockbuster releases, big IP, there are a
Hmm.
few sort of smaller movies that will be releasing, a few independent films, and A24 also has a couple of offerings that'll be rolling out this summer as well. But I know you and I had heard about Past Lives, and we heard about a lot of the positive reaction that it was getting, just all of the critical acclaim that was coming out of Sundance, and we saw that they slotted it for the summer in a really,
Hmm.
really crowded season where we're getting films like Spider-Verse and The Flash
Ooh,
and Indiana Jones is on the way and Elemental. There's just a lot
wow.
happening. And here comes this really small, quiet, independent movie from Celine Song, who's making her directorial debut. And it's becoming talked about as one of the potentially best films of the year. Now, this is a film we got a chance to go check out this past weekend, and with all of that sort of context out the way, I will pass it over to you to tell us, what you thought about Past Lives, and is it one of the best films of 2023 that we've gotten this far?
No notes. I have no notes with this movie. Like, I am a sucker already for rom-coms. A lot of people don't know that. I actually really love rom-coms. They've been bad for a long time, which is why they stopped making them. But Past Lives it's not even a rom-com. It is definitely a romance drama, but you are gonna laugh a couple times, which is why I kind of called it a rom-com. It's not focused on comedy at all. This movie is the embodiment of the song Next Lifetime by Erica Badu. Go listen to Next Lifetime, and it's like, yep, that's the movie. You have just watched Past Lives, y'all. This movie is about two childhood friends, and they were split apart because the girl, her name is Nora, her family immigrated from South Korea. She ends up in New York, and after some time, they kind of try to reconnect, and things go down and things happen, and you can imagine what that looks like. And it is a crazy, I think, whirlwind of a movie. It's filled with emotion. It's filled with patient moments. It's also filled with, I think, it's just it's like a song. I know I said it was like Next Lifetime, but it really is like that. It's like the movie is in song lyrics to me. It's about what what do we believe that we're here because of what happened in past lives? Do we believe that we had a past life together, and what did that past life look like? And what does that mean for this life? It's a slow burn, but I was never bored. I was always in it. The acting is phenomenal, but the idea of it all, the theme of it all was so deep to me and so cool for me, I think, to witness in real time. And by the end of it, the theater was in shambles. People was in that thing crying. I was like, oh my God. Like I didn't cry, but it was crazy when the lights came on. I mean, people just in their seats sniffling and crying and wiping their eyes. And I was like, yeah, this movie is like that. And I really enjoyed it, man. And it's not one of those, I call it patient, but it doesn't go over its runtime. It's just at 146 and it feels right. And it's just it's a rare movie to me because we have been getting more patient movies like this, specifically from Korean cinema. I'm learning this is just like, and not necessarily an aesthetic for them, but it does feel like definitely a genre almost for them, where they're like, we're going to let you just feel everything through all of these scenes, and I'm a sucker for it. I really am, because it feels good, and I love a moment where something happens and everyone can laugh together because they understand what the character's going through, or they understand where somebody stands. And man, this movie is heartbreaking because it's filled of things that you want to happen, that might not happen, and it does, and it doesn't. It's just it's I love the emotional pull of this film, man. And again, no notes. You said it, you asked me at the top if I think it's one of the best movies of the year. Yes, I do, man. I really do. I even give you a quick list right now. It sits under Across the Spider-Verse. This is probably my second favorite movie of the year so far. And I know that's saying a lot. I could be just off the high of watching the movie, and we do, of course, have a lot to see. We're only halfway through the year, but I really enjoyed this film from what it was, and it felt different from a lot of the other, I think, romance movies I had seen before. I thought it would be different, or I thought it would be similar. And going into it, I thought I would get something more cliche, but when they start breaking down everything happening in the movie and the ideas and the themes, it turned out to be a pretty good outing for me, man. So I enjoyed this thoroughly.
Man, I was emotionally knocked out by this movie. It certainly took me by surprise. Heard so many great things about it, but didn't ultimately know what the story was. I tried to stay away from trailers and reviews. I didn't look up anything. I just wanted to let it wash over me. And by the end of it, this became a truly profound cinematic experience because of the themes and the ideas that it's tackling. And when you sort of go beyond, what's actually on the surface in terms of what the description of the movie is, there's this concept that's talked a lot about in the film that sort of, weaves together just the thematic resonance of it. It's about yin yang, which is like this Buddhist sort of ideology about what can occur in people's past lives and how that can influence the events of your current life and maybe even future lives. It's almost sort of similar to reincarnation, I guess, is probably the
Mm-hmm.
closest thing to associate it with, but it goes a little bit further than that, just about the destiny, quote unquote, that people might experience in the most insignificant ways and how that can become super significant, maybe in a future life. And when you just understand what's happening here between these two characters and just the will they, won't they of their relationship, it becomes such a relatable thing and also such emotionally heartbreaking stuff at the same time because of that unrealized potential, but also just the fact that relationships sometimes take new shape as time progresses.
Mm.
Something that might have happened to you at a younger age might not be all that meaningful in the moment, but as you grow older and potentially reconnect with that person or another person, that stuff starts to take on new meaning. And this is like a decades spanning love story. It takes place over
Mm-hmm.
the course of 24 years, and it's separated really neatly into three parts. Like the first is in the childhood, sort of era of these two characters. The next is 12 years later as they're young adults trying to figure out their place in the world. And then 12 years after that, we have seen, them sort of become fully formed adults. And we just see that progression. And a lot of that structure reminded me of Richard Linklater films like the Before trilogy or Boyhood. And that
Mm-hmm.
made me really, sort of associate and just understand and think about the concept of how the passage of time just can influence not only the love that you experience, but also just how you change as a person and how
Wow.
who you are when you're younger is just not the same as who you will be when you ultimately become an adult, and how that can just start to play with the expectations that people will have for you. And you
Mm.
just get some really incredible performances from the leads here. I think Greta Lee is just
Whew.
phenomenal. She just gives a just truly emotionally beautiful performance. Tiao Yu is emoting so many different things with his facial acting, just the body language that he's able to communicate. Because a lot of the movie is in Korean, and he's mostly speaking Korean. And when he's trying to speak English, it's very broken English, but his facial acting is just on a different level. And John Magaro probably has the most difficult role in this movie. I think that what he
Yes.
has to do here is so understated, but it's so incredibly difficult. And I won't give it away, but by the end of it, there's some really emotionally heavy stuff that he has to carry and that he has to communicate. And he has to be simultaneously understanding, but also like protective and defensive at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
The guy is walking just an expert balancing act. And the end of this film, the last act, is really where it all came together for me, and it became sort of on it elevated it to a different experience, just like what ultimately came to fruition in that final act. And there's
Mm-hmm.
even a tracking shot that doesn't break at the end of this movie. It's like the
Oh
last
my God.
sequence. It's like 6 or 7 minutes long. It is I mean, I don't even know what to say about it, but it is one of the most emotionally fraught things that I've experienced in quite a while, just watching it. And there's not even really any dialogue that's said. It just happens. You just see what's happening here. And it's beautiful. It's just so beautifully realized, and it culminates. And I think what this movie is ultimately about, and the line that TLU delivers really is his last line in this movie is just like, oh man, you just brought it home. You just absolutely fucking stuck the landing on everything that you're trying to do here, because this really gets existential and big, and it starts to play with
Mm-hmm.
ideas, and it gets you thinking about all your relationships and just like how you might meet a person at a certain particular moment, and what that ultimately might look like, and just like, how did this happen? How did we cross paths at this time? And why is that so important? And did I know this person maybe in a previous iteration of myself, if you
Mm-hmm.
believe in that sort of thing? I mean, it's just tackling so much, y'all. the performances, the writing, the cinematography of it, just everything about it is just so beautiful. I'm really kind of amazed and impressed that Celine Song out of the gate directing something of this nature and of this stature. Like
a debut.
What a career she's gonna have, over the next like 10 years or so. I just cannot wait to see everything that she'll have in front of her, because this is just absolutely incredible. It is one of the best movies of the year. I think I'm very much of the same mindset as you, that this is probably my second favorite film of the year, right after Across the Spider-Verse. So that should tell you all you need to know about Past Lives. So folks, those are all of our thoughts about the new A24 feature film Past Lives. If you've checked out this movie, or if you plan to check out this movie, please hit us up and let us know what you think